Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Chronicles of Email Marketing with Smaily. Today, we have here another really, really cool guest to talk with. Today, we have here Phil Ireland. He's actually not from Ireland. He's actually from UK. And he is actually the person who we will talk about CRM with. Phil has experience in marketing for more than 16 years, and he has been doing all sorts of different marketing activities, starting from lead generation, affiliate marketing, SEO, PPC, etc., etc. And for the past years, he has actually been mainly focusing on email marketing. And he has also helped companies combine together CRM and email marketing. And this is the most interesting topic that we are going to talk about today as well. But word over to you, Phil. Please go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, and why do you love email marketing?
Thank you very much. And first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here and to speak to you today. And yeah, really excited to our conversations. As you know, my name's Phil Ireland. I've been working in email marketing more so for the last 16 years or so. I started out as a general kind of digital marketer, looking at affiliates, SEO, paid search, basically kind of learning the trade in terms of these different avenues. But one channel that I always kind of was driven to and drawn to was email. And over the last maybe 12, 13 years or so, I've been very much working with a lot of different companies regarding their email marketing strategies. And as email has evolved, and I guess it's now under the umbrella of CRM, and very much working with businesses to make sure they have the right CRM strategies in place. To answer your question about email, I guess what I love about it is the fact that it's instantaneously. You can see the performance of an email very quickly. You can be creative. You can come up with different ideas, different concepts. You can reach out to mass markets. You can see very quickly whether something has captured an audience or not. And I think what's good about email is you can be very proactive, but then also very reactive based on what you're seeing. And I think it's like a channel like no other in terms of the ROI. So you could spend a little time, but obviously everything's time consuming. But in terms of the value of email, I think it's higher than it's ever been. You know, there is a lot of discussions about, is email dead? Is it a channel that's been overused? Are there going to be other channels that kind of take over? For me, there isn't. I think email is fantastic, and I'm a big advocate for it, as you can probably hear. And I believe that whether you are a small business or a large business, you should have some sort of email strategy in place, or at least a CRM strategy as such.
Mm-hmm. I do agree with you. Email marketing is definitely not dead, and it's still developing, and it's going to be even better than ever before. So tell me about CRM, and tell us about CRM. What is it actually, CRM? What we think about when we think about CRM, and how it is related to email marketing?
So I think for me, so in regards to CRM, I think it's really all about the customer or the client or the consumer, whoever is part of your ethos in terms of who you're trying to target. I think CRM is fundamentally important to be able to help reach those people that you're trying to target. And for me, trying to understand your customers or your prospects, or basically anyone that's going to touch base with your brand or your company, there needs to be some sort of strategy in place. And I think CRM is really important for that, because it helps kind of impact not just the marketing department, but also other departments around the business. And I think that sometimes gets missed. I think there's a preconception that CRM is like a marketing channel. It isn't. It's a channel that sits on its own, but it impacts other departments. And I think that's really, really important to make sure that when a business is looking to, have a CRM strategy in place, it has to basically impact those other departments. And through CRM, obviously you have channels underneath it. So for example, email, SMS, push notifications, direct mail, basically all these different touch points that a consumer will be impacted on. I think CRM is really important to make sure it impacts that. The companies that I work with or have worked with might have certain elements that they're working on or working with. So they may have done some email marketing in the past or are doing so, but they need to elevate that. They need to level up, or they don't have any strategy in place, which is criminal. So how can there be a kind of fundamental framework in place to help these companies really start from the bottom and then level up and really start to reach their customers? Yeah, it's huge. What's great to see is that not just from a UK perspective or even a European perspective, but from a global perspective, there is a need for people who work in the CRM environment to really come in and help these companies. And I've seen that even more so in 2024, which is great, because clearly businesses now are seeing the importance of CRM and really how can it make an impact.
Mhm. But is it also like, does it matter how big the company is or how many clients to have? Since which size of company should you start thinking about having an implemented a CRM system actually?
So it's a very good question. And I think for me, whether you are a company that's literally got like 3 or 4 people in the business, whether you're a startup or whether you are, a larger company with more people and you're looking to grow and looking to scale up, I think what's really important is understanding what stage you're currently at as a business and what are your objectives in terms of what do we need to do as a business to really speak to our customers or our potential customers. So to answer your question, I think there should be some sort of CRM strategy in place for every business, but I think it needs to be adaptable once they look to really scale up and grow. I think having the fundamentals in place can really, really help. So, for example, if you're a small business looking to, drive customers in at the very top of the funnel through acquisition and paid search, which obviously costs a lot of money, where I think CRM email marketing can help is making sure that at each stage of that funnel, there is an email campaign or a marketing automation series in place to really help move people down the funnel, get them to convert, get them to show interest and awareness of a brand. I think that's really, really important. And I think those fundamentals are key to not just a small business, but big businesses. It's really, really important to have those levels of communication, of strategies in place, because it just helps move people along the journey. And I think that's really, really important. And that's something I speak to companies on a daily basis, is making sure that they have these strategies, all these tactics, all these communications in place across their customer lifecycle.
Mm-hmm. And to do that, you actually need to understand customers' needs on each of those steps, right? So
Of course.
So how do you define the needs of customers on each step? Do you have some strategies, some tools for that?
Yeah. So what's really, really important is to really outline at the beginning, like, what's the objective of your communications, or what are you really trying to achieve in terms of, are you trying to make customers or people aware of your product or service, or are you trying to get them to convert, which is 2 very, very different things. So I think from the outset, and it's very, very difficult sometimes because we're all very busy and we've all got objectives to kind of achieve, is just take a step back and say, like, what are we trying to achieve here? And for me, the ways of trying to understand a customer is just asking questions at the very early stages. So once someone hits your website, having a potential pop-up just to ask them a couple of questions, or through email communications at the very beginning, maybe putting a question in an email or putting a link to a survey just to find out a little bit more about a user. And I guess one of the hot topics at the moment is progressive profiling, data enrichment. And what I mean by that is, how can we understand more about our customers to help make our communications better from a personalization perspective? And I think what I'm trying to do with the companies that I work with is kind of change the mindset and say, instead of trying to ask these questions at a later date, or once they've already become a customer, try and ask these questions at an earlier stage, because it's so much easier to obtain this information. And once you obtain this information at an earlier stage, it just makes things so much easier in terms of the ongoing communications, because you start to understand the customer more, you know what their needs are, and you have a little bit more of an understanding about their profile, which then helps tailor the communications to them, whether it's through email or through SMS or through any other channel. Really trying to understand the user at the beginning just makes things so much easier, so much smoother going forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I am now the company who needs your service, help me with the CRM, then what is usually the first starting point? What do you first do? If I'm the company who just has the email list and I have a plan that I want to start doing some lead campaigns and etc., but I don't have any other data about the customers, where would you just suggest me to start?
So yeah, and it's a very, very good question, and I think what the first kind of area that I look at is kind of doing a discovery. So understanding from the business perspective, like what are their objectives? What are the key kind of like lead points in terms of where are the points of entry from a customer coming onto the website? How can a customer potentially show interest or intent on the website? And then based on that information, what strategies can be implemented to help move people along the journey. So what I mean by that is you have a database of people. What are we actually seeing within that audience? So can we look at their behavior in terms of certain web pages that they're visiting on the website? Or can we potentially look at their behavior on some campaigns? So one question I would ask is, what are you currently doing in terms of email marketing or any other channel in terms of engagement? Now, normally most businesses will have tested and tried out something, or they may already have some sort of strategy in place, but for one reason or another, it isn't working. So what I like to do is come in, see what they're currently doing or what they're not doing, and then start to formulate a real vision in terms of how can we have, I mentioned it earlier, these communications or tactics in each and every stage of the journey, and where are the current gaps. So this can vary from industry to industry, because let's say, for example, if I'm speaking to a company that's a fintech, their objectives will be very different compared to a company that works in retail, because ultimately the stages or the life cycle stages are quite different. And what you notice is, in terms of the gaps to where they want to move people down the funnel, it can be quite different as well. So it's really trying to understand the industry that they're in, previous activity, also like the size of their databases. So some companies may have a really small database of 0 to 500 contacts because they're just starting out. So how can you grow that? How can you really get the most out of the audience, because it's very, very small? But then other companies might have, audiences over 500,000, really big audiences. So how do you then look at segmentation, behavior, and demographic? Like there's so many layers to it. But what's really, really important for me is really understanding the business's needs. And through my experience, I guess, working with different companies, is how can I kind of help them and really move them and progress them along the journey.
So you said that one key element is to research the customer, understand its needs, etc. So what kind of data points do you actually save about the customer? Do you have this CRM system where you save those data points, or do you use some other systems for that?
I think it all depends. So a lot of businesses will have systems in place, whether it's a CRM, an ESP, or other data platforms, which sometimes are bespoke and built by themselves. I think what's really important is to really just understand the data. I think the data is the key, the biggest and the most important thing. And I think most people will agree with that, is really understanding where the data points are in terms of, are they using third-party data, in terms of data platforms? Are there connections to really understanding what's happening with their consumers? So I call it a discovery because that first stage is really important to understand like what is the current state of play, like what is going on. And sometimes that can take a while because I will ask a lot of questions. Sometimes it stimulates kind of questions for people that I work with because they sometimes go, I didn't think about that, or actually I need to go check that, which is all good because it just kind of outlines it exactly what the current state of play is. And then it doesn't mean that straight away you get all the answers that you're looking for. Sometimes you have to do a lot of investigation. And I guess people who probably will listen to this will have the same issues in terms of one of the hardest things I find is actually doing the research and actually finding out the information that I need. And sometimes this can be quite time consuming because you're working with people who also within the business are trying to find this level of information as well. So sometimes it can be quite time consuming, but ultimately you end up kind of finding the right information that you need, or at least a level of it to be able to start to formulate a strategy and a plan.
Mm-hmm. So if I think of it, what you said to me, basically at the first you do this discovery, when, for example, you go to Google Analytics to see how people behave on the web page and to see what are the key points to where some help might be needed, where some emails might be helpful. And then you start creating those campaigns for companies.
Yeah. So from an email perspective, let's take that as an example. There are kind of points of entry in terms of understanding the behavior of a user. So, for example, the platform that you use to send campaigns out for, obviously you can go in there and look at the reporting dashboards that have been put in place or not. But what's really important is to kind of understand, what the metrics are, how well certain campaigns are performing. Are those campaigns driving revenue, if that's your objective? Or is it driving awareness in terms of getting the click-throughs that you want and need? And then from a website behavior perspective is, and we see through something like Google Analytics, the behavior kind of post-click to see what people are looking at on the website. Are the pages that they're landing on actually relevant to them? Because email can only take you so far along the journey. Ultimately, if email is a navigator to the website, you then need to have that consistent look and feel on your landing pages or website to get those people to show intent or potentially convert. So it's really, really important when, for example, you're coming up with an email marketing strategy, it's not just focusing on the email or the data, but actually focusing on the post-click in terms of like, what does my website, web pages, landing pages look like? Like, are they going to drive the right awareness, engagement, revenue in terms of conversion on those pages to actually showcase that the email is performing? Because I've worked with clients previously where their email engagement is amazing. It's fantastic, really good open rates, really good click-through rates, very low unsubscribes, low bounce rates. On the face of it, the email looked great. But then when you look at the conversion rate, it's terrible. It's not performing. So why is that? And ultimately, it's because once they go from the email to the website, something isn't quite right. So it's just making sure that the right information, the right messages is consistent from the email, but also to the landing pages as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree. You can't just do one part of marketing well and leave the rest for being. It all has to be done together and combined this one huge package.
Yes, exactly. And I think consistency is really key, not just an email, but making sure that consistent message is across all channels, because, we're all consumers. We all use various platforms, touch points, not just email, but, we use our socials. We may engage, in other areas as well. So you may see a message on my email on my phone, but then I might see that consistent message on my socials or on other channels. So it's just making sure that, going back to collaboration, if you're doing an email campaign, on this side also is making sure that there is that consistency across all those different channels. And I think this is something which I guess I've taken away because I've worked on other channels as well. And I've seen sometimes that there is sometimes gaps between one channel and another. I think it's really, really important to make sure that there's that cohesion across each channel.
Yes, otherwise you get you give the wrong impression to the customer when you once say one message and the next time you see another message.
Exactly.
Okay, but getting back to the data points, you said that you still you advise to ask questions from people. I assume that you actually do save those answers somewhere as well, and you use them to profile customers. Am I correct?
Yes, exactly. One of my remits, one of the key parts of my role is using the data, using the information I'm given from a client or research, and really putting together personas and profiles of the audiences we're looking to target. So trying to understand who they are, what their demographic is, what their interests are. And it could be that we already have information on them in terms of previous experience of what they've purchased, for example, if it's working in retail. So all these kind of data points helps to, I guess, paint the picture of who we're trying to target. So trying to understand who the customer is helps me to really make sure we are delivering the right messages to them. So the more I know about a customer, the more I can try and really get in the mindset of who they are, what might be of interest to them, how can I use messaging to influence them to do what I guess we want them to do, whether that's through education, understanding what we're trying to sell or show them, and ultimately, can we get them to convert, whether that's through, filling in a form or actually buying a product? It's really, really important. And I think all part of that it's probably the next stage after discovery is who is the audience that we're trying to target? Who are the segments that we're trying to engage with? And all these different data entry points, information helps to kind of build out these different profiles.
Mm-hmm. So we have talked about that. How we know this? Who is the audience? Is the second step, and we need data for that. We also can use the same data for personalizing emails to make emails really look like they are meant just for me, not for everybody else.
Yes.
Segmentation and personalization is the key here. How deep should I go into those personalization and segmentation?
So I guess it all goes back to what is the objective of the campaign or the email. So I think sometimes there can be this apprehensiveness about you don't want to look like you know too much about someone because that can sometimes turn people off. But you also want to show that you know them well enough to try and engage with them. So it's a very fine line in terms of how personalized should you be. I think there are ways of kind of understanding what works and what doesn't. And what I mean by that is testing comes into practice here in terms of how this is executed. So I find that not enough companies have a testing plan in place. They may do the odd testing here. What I mean by that is they may test subject lines, they may test pre-headers, they may test sender name, they may test things like, call to action buttons and actually the content within campaigns. But sometimes it's very sporadic. There isn't a framework or a blueprint in place to kind of really say, right, this is our testing strategy. This is what we're looking to achieve. And then based on the results, this is what we're looking to execute. So within this testing strategy, this helps you really start to test things like personalization. So in one campaign, you could be super personalized. Again, if you know the information of a user. So it could be things like obviously first name, but it could be stuff like, based on recency in terms of what they've been engaging with on the website or what they've bought previously or any other level of information that we have. This could be smartly put in place within the campaign, but you could test that against a super personalized campaign against one which, let's say, only has a couple of things in it. And you can kind of measure to see whether one campaign performs better than another. Are there any issues with one campaign based on the other one? Having a clear testing framework just really helps to understand the results. But what's really, really important is also not just having personalization in your campaign, but also determining how the campaign looks. And what I mean by that is what I'm currently doing at the moment is testing HTML campaigns. So really nice looking, well designed campaigns against more plain text version campaigns in terms of really stripping back the images, the look and feel, but trying to make it look like it's more of a one-to-one conversation. So testing these two elements and seeing, does one deliver me better engagement over the other? Does one deliver me better click-throughs in terms of, am I seeing more people engage in one email over another? And also, what level of personalization can I put in one campaign over another? So what you find is, in those plain text version campaigns, you can probably put more personalized content in that because it looks more like a one-to-one conversation. I think sometimes when you do these HTML well-designed campaigns, which look great and definitely can work, I think if you overdo it with the personalization, as in putting too much data entry points in, sometimes it can look a little bit like it's too much in terms of Big Brother and overdoing it. So, and again, this is all just based on obviously experience and working with different companies in the past and just seeing how audiences kind of interact with these campaigns. But one thing I would definitely say to anyone is make sure that you have a clear testing framework in place and try and be as proactive as possible, but also try and instill some reactiveness into that as well, based on what you've seen from your campaigns.
Yes, I do agree. Yeah, especially regarding segmentation and personalization, you need to test and see what works with which audience, because audiences are not all the same. You need to exactly know one audience. And if you make a one test with one audience and the same test with another audience, you might get totally different results, actually.
Yeah.
It might be,
exactly.
for example, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing to you. No, you're definitely right. So it's really, really important to just make sure you try and make the test as fluid as possible. Make sure the rules are the same. Maybe only test one element of something. Not try and throw in too many tests, because sometimes that can kind of skew the results, and you don't get what you want from it. So really, just if you're gonna do a test, do one element of a test and maybe increase the frequency of that one test over a period of time, see what the results are, and then going forward, look to implement other tests in the future. So again, it all comes back to that testing strategy.
Yes, yes. So what I can also imagine is that now when I have made some tests on my target groups, I have like many different target groups, and a new customer comes in and I don't know much data about the new customer yet, then still I can somehow profile him because I know what my different segments should look like. Am I correct?
Exactly. Yeah, or the other element of that is, if you only know a little bit of information about someone coming in, you can ask them a couple of questions within your email. So, for example, what I'm doing at the moment is actually putting questions within campaigns, but using the call to action buttons as the answers. So based on what they click on within the call to action button, I can then track that information, which then allows me to understand a little bit more about them. So, for example, it can help me understand the intent, or when are they looking to do a certain thing. And then based on that information, you can then help me tailor those communications going forward to them, because I know that there is a specific time period as to when they are looking to maybe buy a product or engage with the company. So these things can also be implemented as well.
Yes, I totally agree. And this also gives so much more data about the customer. So if I'm doing this with emails, like you said, that you have those different CTA buttons inside the email, you actually collect the data into your email marketing system. So is it possible to do all of this inside my email marketing system, or do I need to have some other softwares aside as well?
So you can do it in your ESP. I think it also depends on what ESP you have, because some are very different to others. So some can give you that level of integration in terms of, what can I get out of my campaigns in terms of understanding the behavior and the analytics. So as you mentioned, that based on click behavior, And also what's really important is setting up your tracking, right? I think if you've got all these elements in place, and again, this can all be outlined in your overall strategy at the beginning, is once you have that level of tracking, or you can actually be able to see the performance of what people are clicking on within your platform, you can then start to build these different queries within your email marketing platform to be able to use them going forward. Now, most platforms should be able to do something like that. Where you want to try and elevate and level up in terms of how can I understand more, and how can I build more of a profile of someone, this is where you may have to potentially look at other ESPs, because as you know, and people who will be listening to this, some ESPs are more powerful than others. So, for example, Mailchimp is great, and it does a job, but it can only take you so far. There are other platforms out there, like HubSpot, like Salesforce, that can really help you elevate and do a lot more in terms of your personalization, in terms of being dynamic as well on your campaigns. There's so many elements to it. But one thing which I mentioned at the very start of our conversation was all these things should be done at the stage of when you're ready to do them. So what I mean by that is, if you're just starting out, a platform like Mailchimp or ActiveCampaign or Constant Contact, there's so many out there, might be the right one for you, but in 3 years' time, it might not be. So it's just making sure that you have the right platform in place when it's right for you, right for your business.
Yes, and vice versa as well. If I'm just starting business in HubSpot, it probably is too much for me. I don't have enough data to use it properly, and it's just a waste of money. So you need to know when is the time when you actually need to level up.
Yeah, and it can be quite overwhelming, because I've worked with companies before where you've given a good example. They've migrated into HubSpot, but they've not been ready for it. And it's overwhelming. There's too much information. They don't know where to start. And, these are all barriers really to really actually being able to actually do the things that they wanted to do, which was to send email campaigns out, or to really, build out a customer journeys. Yeah, I think there is a level of research involved. You need to do your due diligence, really look at the market. You could use a lot of AI tools now to really put in the type of platforms that you need. You could kind of put in a nice brief though, and it could give you results and take you in a direction where you can start to do your own research.
Mm-hmm. That is true. And as you already brought up AI, and, is it true that you can actually use the help of AI to help you with all this data that you have? Once I have collected like how many people have clicked and what have they clicked on and what are they doing on the website, I can just insert all this data into AI and I can get back segments from that. Am I correct?
Yes. AI has been an absolute blessing in terms of being able to make my job and probably a lot of other people's jobs a little bit easier, in terms of being able to take some information and then being able to then kind of use platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, for example, just two examples of being able to take a raw piece of data. So what I mean by that is exporting a CSV file or an Excel file, being able to import that information into one of these AI platforms, and then basically asking the platform to analyze this data and also provide a summary or insights to it. And it just helps. It will never answer the question in terms of being able to do everything 100% in terms of what you're looking to do, but it will always help you get to where you're wanting to get to. So by being able to analyze the data that you have, giving you some recommendations, giving you some summary, it frees up your time, because it can be time consuming to do that. Using these tools just, if anything, just gives you a little bit more time back to be able to say, right, okay, I've got this piece of data. It's telling me this information. Okay, based on this information, what are the next steps? How can I strategically think about how can I be more proactive to helping a client or customer or whoever to really elevate and do more. So these AI tools are great, but I think you have to be able to spend a bit of time to be able to brief them better. And I think you only get out of these kind of platforms as much as you put in terms of, putting the briefs together, actually giving these AI platforms exactly what your objectives are. But I've seen some really good results. And I think that going forward, they're only going to get better. They're not going to take people's jobs away. If anything, they're just going to make your job a little bit easier. And I'm very much in the camp for, they can massively help your job.
I totally agree. They can help you with research and then make some tasks, some boring tasks, so much more easier and
Yes.
fun to do. And for example, if you already, for example, have your segments ready, you can use AI to rephrase your sentences, and this is really helpful.
Yeah, and also from an email perspective, like you can use these tools to get an idea or a steer on different subject lines or different pre-headers. Could you come up with different concepts? And it all helps you build out a key message matrix or framework. So if you're looking to do a campaign, if you're looking to implement certain tests, you could use all these AI tools to give you some ideas as to what tests you could run. But yeah, I'm very much for them.
Yes, totally agree. But coming back to CRM, you said that we talked about two steps that you mentioned. One is discovery, the second is who is your audience. Do you have any more steps on your sleeves that you want to say to us that you should be doing?
Yes. So obviously, once you know of your audience or who your audience is, the next stage for me is making sure that you create a kind of key message matrix or framework, which I mentioned previously. So really understanding, obviously, who your customer is, but then making sure that the right messaging, the right content is being kind of like sent to those people. So what I normally do is once I've established the audiences that I'm looking to target, is what type of content, what type of messages should we be saying to them. So you can imagine that sometimes you're not always speaking to one audience in one campaign. You may be speaking to various audiences within one campaign. So I think what's really important is making sure that you can be sometimes dynamic with the content that you are looking to send to someone. So what I mean by that is you could build one template out, then have dynamic blocks in place that have a different message and it's tailored to a different audience. Now, what's really important, and again, going back to, I mentioned earlier about having a testing framework, is also having a message framework as well. So identifying who your segments are, who your audience is, and then making sure that you have your primary and secondary content messages in place, but then also what is the destination of your campaign in terms of where you're looking to take them to. So this is, again, going back to that consistency of not just thinking about your email campaign, but also thinking about where are they going to go to on your website, or do you need to create a landing page or some sort of additional content to take them to?
Mm-hmm. Yes, what I have seen is usually companies don't have much of a struggle in finding the right messages for those people who maybe don't know about the company yet. But usually companies tend to send just those ordinary monthly newsletters to their existing customers who have already bought them. But I assume that if you have correct plan and a good CRM in place, you actually know which message and when and what is the message about, and so that you can re-engage your existing customers. So what's your experience? Is this the more difficult thing to do than finding new customers, or maybe you have more ideas about that topic?
So I think what's really important, and I think it goes back to what I mentioned at the start of the conversation, was really defining your customer lifecycle strategy. So what I mean by that is at each and every stage of a customer's journey, whether it's through activation, whether it's through then going on to things like loyalty and win backs, is just making sure that there are these tactics in at every stage of that journey. Because ultimately, what you should be doing is making sure that you have these communications in place for when your customers go through these different stages, because unfortunately, not everyone goes down what I call the happy path, where they're doing exactly what you want them to do. So they come on board as a customer, they are continuously, buying products or using your service all the time. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately. So people do go down sometimes the sad path where they don't engage in your campaigns, they aren't buying from you. They were once, but they aren't anymore. So it's making sure that you have these communications in place to understand when they start to go along those different stages, to make sure that you engage with them. So what's really, really important is obviously, activation to get new customers in. But what's as important is retention, because you spend so much time, so much effort, so much money to get these customers in. It's really, really important that you have those strategies in place to keep them engaged, keep them really, part of the brand, part of the service or the products that you're offering, so that they don't either go somewhere else or start to become disengaged. So it's just really, really important that you just keep those level of communications in place. Now, I guess one big factor to really make sure that you at least think about is cadence and frequency, because you don't want to oversend communications to people, but you also want to make sure that people know that you've not forgotten about them. So it's really, really important that as part of your strategy, you try and map out what a customer might see in a week or in a month in terms of activity, and just make sure that the communications or the emails that you're sending to them are relevant to them. Because if they're relevant to them, if they're personalized, if it feels like a one-to-one conversation, I find that you don't have any issues with unsubscribes or lack of engagement. So I think this is really, really important that when you are defining your strategy, when you are mapping out your customer journey, you also map out the cadence and the frequency of how many communications is right for your customers. I think that's really, really important.
So this is also where testing comes into play. You need to test test the frequency as well.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of companies do look at having testing, but then also having like control groups in. So basically putting people into a pot that may not receive all your calls and just seeing how they're doing. Are they engaging? Are they still buying your products or using your service? But yeah, it all goes back to having that testing framework in place.
True. So you have so much experience in this field. Can you give some good examples of how you have seen that when you are digging into the data, you saw that there are some key messages missing from retaining your customers, and how did you solve those things?
Yeah, so a lot of things I found, and I'll give you an example. So I've worked with a lot of fintechs, and one area that I found, especially in the fintech environment, is that they spend a lot of time and effort on acquisition, but when they are going through the onboarding phases and trying to get to know a potential customer better, or getting a customer to do certain elements to become a active user, for example, there are many gaps. So a lot of customers or potential customers drop off. So I think what's really, really important, and again goes back to looking at your funnel or looking at your kind of customer journey for being a prospect to becoming a customer, is just making sure that you utilize CRM, utilize email marketing to help engage with those people. So they go from one stage to another and it's quite a seamless journey. Or if they do drop off, how can you get them back into the life cycle? I think that's really, really important. From a retail perspective, what you find is there is a need to obviously get customers to buy from you. But what's really, really important is how can you keep those customers engaged to the point of when they are looking to buy from you again, they think of you and they don't think of a customer. So I think what's really, really important is having that balance between kind of product information about a certain item or category, but then also having this like education awareness piece that's more about information, or let's say if it's a clothing brand, can you provide some like tips or hints, or goes back to that educational piece? How can you provide really good content for someone to really engage in your brand? Because what I find is if someone is super engaged, as in they're opening your emails, they're clicking your emails, they're a strong advocate for your brand, they will buy from you, and they're also a great person to speak to get testimonials or to get really good feedback. So it's really, really important that you have that fine balance between trying to convert someone, but then also trying to educate and provide better content, because we now live in a world where people are very content hungry. People engage in YouTube, they engage in social media channels a lot more because people want the content. They like to engage. So it's really, really important that we use channels like email to make sure that we have this relevant content in place as well.
I totally agree that having this connection with your customers is really important, and you don't always need to sell, but you need to have the connection, and you can create this connection in many different ways. Like you said, asking for testimonials, or if a person recommends your product to somebody else, then probably they are already so invested into your product that they are much more likely to buy from you again.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about lifetime value. I think, how can you increase the lifetime value of your customers? How can you get more out of them? I think it's a two-way relationship. Like, they need to feel valued. They need to feel like they are, the very best customers that you have. And by them having that kind of feeling, again, goes back to personas and understanding who your customers are. They will do anything for you. You ask them to do something, they'll do it for you. They will really, really engage with your brand.
And also they can actually give you value as well, because loyal customers usually, they are not afraid to give you feedback if there's something that can be improved, and you can give it back to the development team or the sales teams, or what they can improve. And this is also information you can store in the CRM as well.
Exactly. So it all comes back to first, a lot of the topics I see at the moment is zero-party data, first-party data. I think the more you could get from these different elements just helps communication. It helps you evolve. It helps you move forward rather than kind of being more reactive. I think the better you can engage with your customers, but the right customers, the more you can understand what they like, what they don't like. And again, going back to at the very beginning where I talked about CRM impacting different departments, if you understand your customers better, you can basically, like you said, give this information to other people around different departments and different teams, and they can also utilize this information as well.
Exactly. So CRM is not just for marketing purposes. Actually, it is a tool for everybody to use, and just the marketing has the great opportunity to get the information from the customers, and that's what CRM is for.
Yeah, I think one of my big objectives is to try and change the mindset and make people aware that CRM isn't there to assist departments, it's there to influence departments. And I think that's the mindset that I'm trying to change people now, is to really just change that little perception. And the more I can try and influence people along that journey to try and understand that, it can assist, but it's so much stronger and so much bigger than that. It can really help influence your strategies, your performances going forward.
I totally agree with you. We are going to always an hour of talking now, going into 1 hour of talking now, and it's time to start thinking of some last words that we want to say. So usually I ask my dear guests here is like 3 things that people need to know about your topic. So 3 things that people need to know about CRM while using it in email marketing. What are the most important things that people need to know about it?
Okay, so there's probably more than 3, but if I had to pick 3, I think what's majorly important is your data. I think you can't send an email out if you don't have any data or you don't have the right data, because you can create the best look email, it can look amazing, but if it's going to the wrong people or the data isn't quite right, you're not going to see the results that you expect. So getting your data right, whether you have 10 people in your database or you have 10 million, I think it's really, really important that you have some sort of structure in place, because that helps then define what sort of campaigns that you're doing. I think the next kind of key thing for me is, and it ties back to your data, is really understanding who you're looking to target. Many businesses will have their audiences that they're looking to, engage with. What's really important is really understanding who they are. So it goes back to what we spoke about personas. So what's really, really important is making sure that you have a level of understanding about who you're actually trying to target. And it's very, very, it links to point number one. And then point number three is probably a little bit off the first two, is have fun. Like, literally have fun. Enjoy what you do, because if you enjoy something more, you will just do it a lot better. And if you're like me, if you enjoy doing email marketing, enjoy doing CRM, have fun with it, And what I mean by that is put in little tests, try things out differently, try and be interactive, look at things differently. How can you put gamification? How can you try different things? And it goes back to testing. Just have some fun, because I find that you spend so much time working and trying to help from a work aspect that, other things in life kind of get put aside. So if you can have a bit of fun while you're doing it, try and have a bit of fun. It helps the mind, and it just helps you to do a lot more. And I think that's a key thing that I'm trying to kind of implement into my daily work for this year. So if someone seeing this can take one thing away, it's just try and have a little bit more fun.
So it's like basically email marketing is like dating. You need to get to know the other person on the other side to have a good relationship.
Yes, that is a good way of putting it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. One, I think the thing that I would like to point out from today's really good talk is that the CRM is not just for marketing. It is actually, as you said, an influence for all the departments. It is a central part of getting to know your customers, and you can utilize this data everywhere in the company. And it's your job as a marketeer to get as much data from your customers as possible. So date a lot with your customers.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil, for this really interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I had much fun teaching with you.
No, thank you very much for having me as well.
Yes, and all the listeners, thank you for listening, and see you already next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care now. Bye-bye.